want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. As Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. Folks, today on the United States Senate floor, Raphael Warnock, the U.S. Senator from Georgia, gave his first floor speech and gave a powerful speech on the issue of voting rights. This is what he had to say.
President.
The Senator from Georgia.
Mr. President, before I begin my formal remarks, I want to pause to condemn the hatred and violence that took 8 precious lives last night in metropolitan Atlanta. I grieve with Georgians, with Americans, with people of love all across the world. This unspeakable violence, visited largely upon the Asian community, is one that causes all of us to recommit ourselves to the way of peace, an active peace that prevents these kinds of tragedies from happening in the first place. We pray for these families. Mr. President, I rise here today as a proud American and as one of the newest members of the Senate in awe of the journey that has brought me to these hallowed halls, and with an abiding sense of reverence and gratitude for the faith and sacrifices of ancestors who paved the way. I am a proud son of the great state of Georgia, born and raised in Savannah, a coastal city known for its cobblestone streets and verdant town squares, towering oak trees, centuries old and covered in gray Spanish moss, stretch from one side of the street to the other, bend and beckon the lover of history and horticulture to this city by the sea. I was educated at Morehouse College, and I still serve in the pulpit of the Ebenezer Baptist Church, both in Atlanta, the cradle of the civil rights movement. And so, like those oak trees in Savannah, my roots go down deep, and they stretch wide in the soil of Waycross, Georgia, and Burke County, and Scriven County. In a word, I am Georgia, a living example and embodiment of its history and its hope, of its pain and promise, the brutality and possibility. Mr. President, at the time of my birth, Georgia's 2 senators were Richard B. Russell and Herman E. Talmadge, both arch segregationists and unabashed adversaries of the civil rights movement. After the Supreme Court's landmark Brown versus Board ruling outlawing school segregation, Talmadge warned that blood will run in the streets of Atlanta. Senator Talmadge's father, Eugene Talmadge, former governor of our state, had famously declared, "The South loves the Negro in his place, but his place is at the back door." When once asked how he and his supporters might keep black people away from the polls, he picked up a scrap of paper and wrote a single word on it: pistols. Yet there is something in the American covenant, in its charter documents, and its Jeffersonian ideals that bends toward freedom. And led by a preacher and a patriot named King, Americans of all races stood up. History vindicated the movement that sought to bring us closer to our ideals, to lengthen and strengthen the cords of our democracy. And I now hold the seat, the Senate seat, where Herman E. Talmadge sat. And that's why I love America. I love America because we always have a path to make it better, to build a more perfect union. It is a place where a kid like me who grew up in public housing, first college graduate in my family, can now stand as a United States Senator. I had an older father. He was born in 1917. Serving in the Army during World War II, he was once asked to give up his seat to a young teenager while wearing his soldier's uniform. They said making the world safe for democracy. But he was never bitter. And by the time I came along, he had already seen the arc of change in our country. He maintained his faith in God and in his family and in the American promise, and he passed that faith on to his children. My mother grew up in Waycross, Georgia. You know where that is? It's way across Georgia. And like a lot of black teenagers in the 1950s, she spent her summers picking somebody else's tobacco and somebody else's cotton. But because this is America, the 82-year-old hands that used to pick somebody else's cotton went to the polls in January and picked her youngest son to be a United States Senator. Ours is a land where possibility is born of democracy, a vote, a voice, a chance to help determine the direction of the country and one's own destiny within it. Possibility born of democracy. That's why this past November and January, my mom and other citizens of Georgia grabbed hold of that possibility and turned out in record numbers, 5 million in November, 4.4 million in January, far more than ever in our state's history. Turnout for a typical runoff doubled. And the people of Georgia sent their first African-American senator and first Jewish senator, my brother John Ossoff, to these hallowed halls. But then what happened? Some politicians did not approve of the choice made by the majority of voters in a hard-fought election in which each side got the chance to make its case to the voters. And rather than adjusting their agenda, rather than changing their message, they are busy trying to change the rules. We are witnessing right now a massive and unabashed assault on voting rights unlike anything we've ever seen since the Jim Crow era. This is Jim Crow in new clothes. Since the January election, some 250 voter suppression bills have been introduced by state legislatures all across the country, from Georgia to Arizona, from New Hampshire to Florida, using the big lie of voter fraud as a pretext for voter suppression. The same big lie that led to a violent insurrection on this very Capitol the day after my election. Within 24 hours, we elected Georgia's first African-American Jewish senator, and hours later, the Capitol was assaulted. We see in just a few precious hours the tension very much alive in the soul of America. And the question before all of us at every moment is, what will we do to push us in the right direction? And so politicians driven by that big lie aim to severely limit and in some cases eliminate automatic and same-day voter registration, mail-in and absentee voting, and early voting and weekend voting. They want to make it easier to purge voters from the voting roll altogether. And as a voting rights activist, I've seen up close just how draconian these measures can be. I hail from a state that purged 200,000 voters from the roll one Saturday night in the middle of the night. We know what's happening here. Some people don't want some people to vote. I was honored on a few occasions to stand with our hero and my parishioner, John Lewis. I was his pastor, but I'm clear he was my mentor. On more than one occasion, we boarded buses together after Sunday church services as part of our Souls to the Polls program, encouraging the Ebenezer Church family and communities of faith to participate in the democratic process. Now, just a few months after Congressman Lewis's death, there are those in the Georgia legislature, some who even dared to praise his name, that are now trying to get rid of Sunday Souls to the Polls, making it a crime for people who pray together to get on a bus together in order to vote together. I think that's wrong. Matter of fact, I think that a vote is a kind of prayer for the kind of world we desire for ourselves and for our children. And our prayers are stronger when we pray together. To be sure, we have seen these kinds of voter suppression tactics before. They are a part of a long and shameful history in Georgia and throughout our nation, but refusing to be denied. Georgia citizens and citizens across our country brave the heat and the cold and the rain, some standing in line for 5 hours, 6 hours, 10 hours, just to exercise their constitutional right to vote. Young people, old people, sick people, working people, already underpaid, forced to lose wages to pay a kind of poll tax while standing in line to vote. And how do some politicians respond? Well, they're trying to make it a crime to give people water and a snack as they wait in lines that are obviously being made longer by their draconian actions. Think about that. Think about that. They're the ones making the lines longer through these draconian actions. And then they want to make it a crime to bring grandma some water while she's waiting in a line that they're making longer. Make no mistake, this is democracy in reverse. Rather than voters being able to pick the politicians are trying to cherry pick their voters. I say this cannot stand. And so I rise, Mr. President, because that sacred and noble idea, one person, one vote, is being threatened right now. Politicians in my home state and all across America, in their craven lust for power, have launched a full-fledged assault on voting rights. They are focused on winning at any cost, even the cost of the democracy itself. And I submit that it is the job of each citizen to stand up for the voting rights of every citizen. And it is the job of this body to do all that it can to defend the viability of our democracy. And that's why I am a proud co-sponsor of the For the People Act, which we introduced today. The For the People Act is a major step in the march toward our democratic ideals, making it easier, not harder, for eligible Americans to vote by instituting common sense pro-democracy reforms, like establishing national automatic voter registration for every eligible citizen, and allowing all Americans to register to vote online and on Election Day, requiring states to offer at least 2 weeks of early voting, including weekends, in federal elections, keeping Souls to the Polls programs alive, prohibiting states from restricting a person's ability to vote absentee or by mail, and preventing states from purging the voter rolls based solely on unreliable evidence like someone's voting history, something we've seen in Georgia and other states in recent years. And it would end the dominance of big money in our politics and ensure our public servants are there serving the public. Amidst these voter suppression laws and tactics, including partisan and racial gerrymandering, and in a system awash in dark money and the dominance of corporatist interests and politicians who do their bidding, the voices of the American people have been increasingly drowned out and crowded out and squeezed out of their own democracy. We must pass for the people so that the people might have a voice. Your vote is your voice, and your voice is your human dignity. But not only that, we must pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. You know, voting rights used to be a bipartisan issue. The last time the voting rights bill was reauthorized was 2006. George W. Bush was president, and it passed this chamber 98-0. But then in 2013, the Supreme Court rejected the successful formula for supervision and pre-clearance contained in the 1965 Voting Rights Act. They asked Congress to fix it. That was nearly 8 years ago. And the American people are still waiting. Stripped of protections, voters in states with a long history of voter discrimination and voters in many other states have been thrown to the winds. We Americans have noisy and spirited debates about many things, and we should. That's what it means to live in a free country. But access to the ballot ought to be nonpartisan. I submit that there should be 100 votes in this chamber for policies that will make it easier for Americans to make their voices heard in our democracy. Surely, there ought to be at least 60 in this chamber who believe, as I do, that the four most powerful words uttered in a democracy are "the people have spoken." Therefore, we must ensure that all of the people can speak. But if not, we must still pass voting rights. The right to vote is preservative of all other rights. It is not just another issue alongside other issues. It is foundational. It is a reason why any of us has the privilege of standing here in the first place. It is about the covenant we have with one another as an American people, e pluribus unum, out of many one. It, above all else, must be protected. And so let's be clear. I'm not here today to spiral into the procedural argument regarding whether the filibuster in general has merits or has outlived its usefulness. I'm here to say that this issue is bigger than the filibuster. I stand before you saying that this issue, access to voting and preempting politicians' efforts to restrict voting, is so fundamental to our democracy that it is too important to be held hostage by a Senate rule, especially one historically used to restrict expansion of voting rights. It is a contradiction to say we must protect minority rights in the Senate while refusing to protect minority rights in the society. Colleagues, no Senate rule should overrule the integrity of our democracy. And we must find a way to pass voting rights whether we get rid of the filibuster or not. And so as I close, and nobody believes a preacher when he says as I close, let me say that as a man of faith, I believe that democracy is the political enactment of a spiritual idea. The sacred worth of all human beings. The notion that we all have within us a spark of the divine and a right to participate in the shaping of our destiny. Reinhold Niebuhr was right. Humanity's capacity for justice makes democracy possible, but humanity's inclination to injustice makes democracy necessary. John Lewis understood that and was beaten on a bridge defending it. Amelia Boynton, like so many women not mentioned nearly enough, was gassed on that same bridge. A white woman named Viola Luiso was killed. Medgar Evers was murdered in his own driveway. Schwerner, Cheney, and Goodman, two Jews and an African-American standing up for that sacred idea of democracy, also paid the ultimate price. And we in this body would be stopped and stymied by partisan politics, short-term political gain, Senate procedure. I say let's get this done no matter what. I urge my colleagues to pass these two bills, strengthen and lengthen the cords of our democracy, secure our credibility as the premier voice for freedom-loving people and democratic movements all over the world, and win the future for all of our children. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
That was Senator Raphael Warnock, my senator here in Georgia, also my pastor at Ebenezer Baptist Church, giving a powerful address in the defense of voting rights in the United States Senate today. It is crucial that we pass through the John Lewis voting rights SB, and also the Senate bill on voter protection. We are seeing across the country attacks on the right to vote, and it's very important for everyone to contact their senators, join civic organizations, fight back against voter suppression. Again, we represent the majority, and we have to stop allowing a dedicated minority to prevent us from progressing forward.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have that you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it, please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. As Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. 31-year-old Paul Murray arrested Wednesday afternoon by D.C. Metropolitan Police when he was found lurking outside of the U.S. Naval Observatory. That is the official residence of the Vice President of the United States. Now, of course, Vice President Kamala Harris and the second gentleman, Douglas Emhoff, they actually are staying at Blair House while repairs are being done at the Naval Observatory. Now, Paul Murray from Texas, what was he carrying? They found an AR-15 semi-automatic rifle and 113 rounds of ammunition in his vehicle. What the hell y'all think he was kind of carrying that firepower around? This is of significant concern, Reese, because we know the level of attacks, the amount of attacks, and the vitriol that was directed towards then Senator Kamala Harris. So it's no surprise we would hear this now that she is vice president.
Absolutely. I think it's one of the more undercovered aspects of her career. I mean, she even stated before that when she was Attorney General, she was strapped because of the threats that she received. So these are not new things. People forget that when the whole, I don't know if you guys remember the pipe bombs that were being sent out to different various Democrats, including President Obama or ex-President Obama at the time. Then Senator Kamala Harris was one of the people who were mailed those pipe bombs. If you look at just the rhetoric that's against her on social media, there have been reports that shows that she is the most attacked politician, female politician, in some case politician, male or female, on the internet by an exponentially larger amount. And so what people need to understand is that we know that VP Kamala Harris is strong, but we need to wrap our arms around her in protection and recognize the unique threats that she faces. As a Black woman, she is the biggest threat to white male patriarchy this country has seen in a very long time. And that's why so much has been put behind trying to stop her from ascending to the position of VP. And she's going to be under constant threat. And that is not something that should be minimized. And they need to be doing everything in their power to protect her.
Absolutely.
Amisha?
I agree with Reese here, because what we're seeing is that not only are the threats great and the potential even greater, Kamala Harris is seen by Republicans, and they knew this when Joe Biden announced her as vice president. She is seen as the biggest threat to America. The biggest threat to America in the eyes of white supremacists is a Black woman leader. And I think that because obviously, her ascension from vice president to president when she decides to run, that is disruptive to the entire white scheme of how things are supposed to go in these systems. And I think that to the point of them really pushing, we're seeing these white domestic terrorist groups. We're also seeing we're seeing leaders of the right-wing media talk about her 24/7 as though she is a terrorist that needs to be removed, even though she's sitting vice president and has served in the Senate, has served at the state levels as well. The problem with that is it goes to show the threat and the force that white men particularly use against Black women. And I think that what we're watching happen with Kamala Harris is a push to ensure that she is the biggest threat, that she is to be feared, that she is to be dissolved, that she is to be destroyed. And mark my words, if we do not protect that woman, they will get what they want in the same way that they've tried to do it time and time again, as Black people, particularly women, have ascended to positions of power.
Greg, we cannot ignore these real threats.
Well, so far, the country has ignored them. In fact, so far, the country has abetted. I don't mean us. I don't mean Black. I mean the folks who are supporters of white nationalism with their silence or with their cosplay that this is somehow the norm. Of course, we all remember during the 2008 campaign, the perpetual fear that Barack or Michelle Obama or the children might be harmed. Some people in the audience who are old enough to remember 1984 when Jesse Jackson didn't get Secret Service protection until after the Nation of Islam provided the fruit and the MGT, the Muslim Girls in Training, at which point they jumped to give him Secret Service protection. And then the debate was maybe we would rather have the nation because we don't trust the Secret Service. So in this sense, if a guy is sitting out in front of your house with an AR-15, 113 rounds and 5 magazines and 30 clips each on right around the corner from Embassy Row, and we make this about Vice President Harris, and you're right, there's a gender dimension to this, absolutely. We have to understand that the real villain in this is this country. What do I mean by that? I'm saying that Joni Ernst talking about protecting the Second Amendment, this white boy, Robert Aaron Long, buying a gun, as Reese said, then going and shooting these women. What is the common thread? Violence by any means necessary. When you heard Alicia Brooks talk about an ethno-state, what they are saying is that we will stop at nothing. Like Amisha said, we will stop at nothing to protect what we perceive as our interests. And the only question anybody who says this is a shame should have is, what are you going to do to participate in rewriting the DNA of this country so that this sister is not, her life is not under perpetual threat? That's the only question. There are no innocent bystanders in this. None.
Absolutely.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have, you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it, please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. As Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible.
No, these are the same senators who wouldn't give Merrick Garland a hearing, wouldn't even meet with him when he was the nominee, Barack Obama's nominee for the Supreme Court, who are currently grilling him over whether or not Kristen Clarke and Vanita Gupta are somehow racist or anti-Semitic. At the same time, they're still failing to condemn and continue the big lie on voter fraud, even while their supporters were trying to lynch Mike Pence in that very same building. So if it strikes you as disingenuous, join the club. Let's hear Tucker Carlson on this same subject. Let's play the clip of Tucker Carlson on this.
Kristen Clarke is Joe Biden's pick to run the Justice Department's enormously powerful Civil Rights Division. Clarke says her job is simple. It's to end hate. But like so many in her world, Clarke is in fact an enthusiastic purveyor of what she claims to fight. Clarke's been on the show several times. The new investigation, though, by our reporters has uncovered shocking, and we don't use that word lightly, legitimately shocking statements that Clarke made in public while at Harvard. In 1994, Clarke wrote a letter to the Harvard Crimson in her capacity as the president of the Black Studies Association. Clarke wanted to explain her views on race science. Quote, "Please use the following theories and observations to assist you in your search for truth regarding the genetic differences between blacks and whites." End quotes. You know it's going to be interesting, and it was. Quote, 1, Dr. Richard King reveals that at the core of the human brain is the locus coeruleus, which is a structure that is black because it contains large amounts of neuromelanin, which is essential for its operation. 2, black infants sit, crawl, and walk sooner than whites. 3, Carol Barnes notes that human mental processes are controlled by melanin, that same chemical which gives blacks their superior physical and mental abilities. 4, some scientists have revealed that most whites are unable to produce melanin because their pineal glands are often calcified or non-functioning. Pineal calcification rates with Africans are 5 to 15%, Asians 15 to 25%, and Europeans 60 to 80%. This is the chemical basis for the cultural differences between blacks and whites. And 5, melanin endows blacks with greater mental, physical, and spiritual abilities, something which cannot be measured based on Eurocentric standards. End quote. Let that sink in. Melanin endows black people with greater mental, physical, and spiritual abilities. No, that's not an editorial from the Final Call, Louis Farrakhan's free newspaper. That is a direct quote from the person Joe Biden is about to put in charge of this country's civil rights laws. Even at Harvard, crackpot theories like that were considered deranged and dangerous. After an outcry on campus, Kristen Clarke suggested that she didn't necessarily believe what she had written. Now, the Harvard Crimson, a left-wing paper, did not buy that explanation. Well, does she or doesn't she, wrote the editors. So far, she has given us every indication that she does. And indeed, she did. Just a month later, Kristen Clarke invited the noted Trinidadian anti-Semite, Tony Martin, to speak on campus. Martin, then a professor at Wellesley College, was the author of a self-published manifesto called The Jewish Onslaught. In it, Martin chronicled the, quote, escalating Jewish onslaught against black people. Now, for Martin's fans, like Kristen Clarke, Martin's speech at Harvard did not disappoint. He attacked both Jews and Judaism as a religion. Tony Martin spent his final years giving speeches to Holocaust denial organizations on topics such as, quote, tactics of organized Jewry in suppressing free speech, end quote. Kristen Clarke strongly approved of Tony Martin, and we're not speculating, because as she told the Crimson after his speech, quote, Professor Martin is an intelligent, well-versed black intellectual who bases his information on indisputable fact. So again, directly from Kristen Clarke, Tony Martin's anti-Semitism was based on, quote, indisputable fact. Kristen Clarke has never shed these views. They've simply become more sophisticated. Just last year, as a lawyer, Clarke was fighting for the crudest kind of racial discrimination in college admissions. This fall, she said it was, quote, madness for the federal government to take the side of Asian applicants who had provably been denied college admission purely because of their skin color. But tough luck. As far as Kristen Clarke was concerned, those Asians didn't have enough melanin, and melanin is the key. Speaking of madness, in a sane country, someone like Kristen Clarke would be under investigation by the Civil Rights Division, not running it. How crazy have we become? Well, we will see if Clarke's nomination gets to the U.S. Senate. And if it does, we're in serious trouble.
Let's remember, Donald Trump's first nominee for Attorney General was Jeff Sessions. Jeff Sessions, who was denied a federal judgeship in 1986 because he was too racist for Ronald Reagan. And at the time, during his confirmation hearings, Jeff Sessions said, and I quote, the NAACP, the SCLC, Operation Push, the National Council of Churches are all un-American organizations teaching anti-American values. But Republicans and conservatives did not speak out against Jeff Sessions then, as they did not against Bill Whitaker or Bill Barr, Donald Trump's other attorney generals. But when you're trying to address civil rights, now they have a problem.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have that you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it, please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible.
Folks, Republicans, white Republicans are still doing their best to try to act as if that was just a picnic taking place on that day. Listen to this comment that Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson made to conservative radio talk show host Joe Pagliarulo. Listen to this, folks.
Also criticized because I've made the comment that on January 6th, I never felt threatened. because I didn't, and mainly because I knew that even though those thousands of people there were marching to the Capitol were trying to pressure people like me to vote the way they wanted me to vote, I knew those were people that love this country, that truly respect law enforcement, would never do anything to break a law, and so I wasn't concerned. Now, had the tables been turned, and Joe, this got me in trouble, had the tables been turned and President Trump won the election, and those were tens of thousands of Black Lives Matter and Antifa protesters, I might have been a little concerned.
Wow. It's a big statement, but it's a true statement. We see the recent history.
Big statement, true statement. Joining me right now is Congresswoman Gwen Moore of Wisconsin. Congresswoman, welcome back to Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Thank you so much, Roland and Dr. Malvo. I tell you, this is when I missed being in person, when I'm with folk like you.
Well, hopefully we'll get. Hopefully we'll get there soon. I had my first Moderna shot on Friday. Our next one is April 9th, and so hopefully in a few months we can be back to being in person. Give us your thoughts on this unbelievable comment made by Senator Ron Johnson. He's been blasted all weekend. Folks saying his white supremacist views are standing up. I mean, here is somebody who supposedly was moderate voice or whatever, but he is absolutely a hardcore Trumper with this nonsense, and he would have been scared if it was Black Lives Matter and Antifa. First of all, as if those two go together, these people killed the cop. These people, I mean, they trampled one woman to death. It led to one of the fellow rioters getting shot and killed. 5 people died. What the hell is your senator talking about?
Well, our ancestor at this point, Maya Angelou's birthday is going to be Easter Sunday, and her words keep coming to me. When a person shows you who they are, believe them. And, Ron Johnson didn't just start being like this. Ron Johnson was in deep denial about the president's and his corruption, denial about the riot, the incitement, and how, he said, as far as he was concerned, it didn't really fit the definition of an insurrection. He's someone that was pushing these conspiracy theories. I mean, to this day, he still was engaged and involved in denying that the election was a legitimate exercise in our democracy. And so, maybe he's not planning to run again, or maybe he's trying to take advantage of the fact that Joe Biden just barely won the state of Wisconsin, is trying to inherit that base of hardcore white supremacists. Because his statement certainly has galvanized the emotions. I mean, these cultural wars, this is their go-to position, Roland. Think about it. If you're a Trumpster, when you voted against giving people $1,400 a month, when you voted against helping poor farmers in Wisconsin, this is an agricultural state, by the way, debt relief that they desperately needed. When you deny aid to restaurant and bar businesses that are barely hanging on to their chinny chin chins, you got to come up with something. And so these cultural wars work very, very well.
Well, you talk about those cultural wars working very, very well, but what you have here again is this trying to position that Black Lives Matter was somehow, oh my God, these people are violent and crazy. And you're sitting going, and maybe Senator Johnson, you're saying that because you're a white Republican, okay, who sides with them. But these people were hell-bent to kill. That was their strategy. They were hell-bent to kill. And the FBI is arresting numerous folks constantly for what they were trying to do. I mean, this is like, what world is this guy living in?
He wasn't afraid. And they had Kevin McCarthy out there. I mean, this isn't the first time that a minority leader was murdered right there in that storied building. And they were pounding on Kevin McCarthy's door, trying to get in while he called the president. And that was when he made the snarky remark, well, Kevin, apparently you're not as worried about the election as they are. he was tracking down his vice president next in line for the succession with a noose. And the noose it strikes terror in my mind as an African American. They had a noose chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." They were looking for Nancy Pelosi. And so he was not frightened by his kindred spirits. But he would have been intimidated by, there were 10,000 or more protests. And like I said, these protests garnered the support of people from every race, every age group, every state. It became a global initiative after George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. All these people who were storming the Capitol. They were not Antifa. They were not Black Lives Matter. They were stone cold white supremacist folk walking around with Nazi apparel, a Confederate flag, and he was not afraid among his brethren.
What are Black folks there in Wisconsin? How are they responding to Senator Ron Johnson? He's up for re-election next year. I've made it perfectly clear we're going to spend some time there because folks like him need to be thrown smooth the hell out of office.
Thank you so much, Roland. Thank you. And I'm going to hold you to that, to come on to the Milky Way, because we're going to need it. This is a swing state. We have some of the worst conditions for African Americans in the country here. Those data get buried underneath the fact that, we're not Mississippi or Alabama or somewhere with large numbers of African Americans. But per capita, we have the most incarcerated African Americans, most redlined, least home ownership, worst place in the country for Black children. So many indicators, so much of the misery index. And the last thing we need is a senator who wants to cast fear and apprehension and doubt into the minds of Americans about the worthiness of African Americans. And so, come on, we have a very bright group of Democrats forming a Democratic primary. And I wouldn't be surprised if Ron Johnson decides to run, that there wouldn't be somebody, among Republicans who would challenge him, because he is out to lunch.
Well, he gave also indication that he may not even seek re-election. Either way, Senator Johnson, a bullseye's on your back in terms of taking you out for re-election.
Bye, Senator Johnson.
That's what it boils down to. It's time to go, and so this is where black votes are going to be critical there in Wisconsin, and for white folks in Wisconsin to step up as well. So, Congresswoman Gwenmore, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Avis, I want to start with you here. Your thoughts on these comments, what he said, and again, what he's basically saying is, if those Black people have come, I would have been scared to death, but I was with my white brethren and the Trumpers, and I was safe and comfy.
The man's a liar. Wasn't it just a couple of weeks ago when he was trying to sell the lie that it was actually Antifa that raided the Capitol? Clearly he lied there. Here, he may or may not be lying, but the reality here is that he is definitely trying to appeal to the white supremacist base of the Republican Party, of what is the Republican Party right now. And so, it's really interesting how right now people have gotten so used to being so flagrant with their racism. And the fact that with this particular Republican Party, it's actually used as an asset because they know that is now the base, the core. The new Republican Party is the Trump Republican Party, which is the white supremacist, white nationalist, redneck Republican Party. That's who he was talking to. And the fact that he would sit there and say, these people aren't criminals and they wouldn't, they love the country, was especially ridiculous, given the fact, as you pointed out, they murdered, they maimed, they actually were in the process of a lynch mob. The only other thing I would do, quite frankly, if I was in Congress right now, if he's going to make statements like that, then he needs to honestly be investigated to see if he was in some level of collusion with these people, because we know that they did have inside help. In fact, I believe that they had inside help, not only from Capitol Police, but also from some Congress people. So to me, I'm really wondering why some of the Democrats don't start to open up some investigations on their colleagues who are clearly in cahoots with these individuals who put all of their lives in danger.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have, you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it. Please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible.
Folks, as I said, this is not. I told you this was not going to happen just in Georgia. It's happening all across the country, as well as happening in Texas. They are specifically trying to target Harris County. The Republicans there have proposed election reform. They want to stop curbside voting. They want to stop drive-through voting. All of the creative ways they were able to use to get folks to vote there in Texas. They want to stop all of that. Now I keep telling people what's going on here to understand what these folks are doing. They are going to try to use their majorities in the House and the Senate, as well as holding the governor's mansion, to actually stop from voting. This is the greatest threat to voting since the Jim Crow era, and Republicans are leading this. My panel right now, of course, is Dr. Avis Jones-DeWeaver, a leadership strategist. We have Dr. Julian Mavo, president emerita, Bennett College, and also Omokengo Dominga, professional lecturer, School of International Service, American University. Let me start with you, Avis. This is pure Jim Crow. We can't look. They can dance all around. This is targeting of black voters. And again, Georgia, Texas, Iowa, Pennsylvania, Florida, Mississippi, Alabama. We can go on and on. North Carolina. They want to stop the voting for Democrats. They want to stop black people because they see the train that's coming down the track in 2022, and they're saying we want to guarantee victory.
Yes, I have said for quite a while that the Republican Party seems to respect the black vote more than the Democratic Party does, given the amount of investment, time, and effort they put into stopping our ability to vote. And now they've just taken it up 1,000 by what they are coordinating across the country. This kind of reminds me of the Stand Your Ground laws and how that was so well coordinated and replicated in states all across the country. They've basically taken that same playbook, and they're doing that now as it relates to voting rights laws, trying to undercut our ability to vote by specifically targeting our methodologies as well as our geographic concentrations in those various different states. And so absolutely, this is modern day Jim Crow. They're not even trying to hide it. They have gotten big, bad, and bold about it now that they're no longer under a fully strengthened Voting Rights Act. And that's why it's so important that we have legislation passed in Congress that's going to curtail these efforts by strengthening the Voting Rights Act and ultimately putting it back in place.
Julian, Julian, back here in Atlanta, and I told folks this was going to happen. This was coming down the pipe, and we've seen what they're trying to do in Texas. And the governor admits today in Texas at a news conference there was no voter fraud, but he still wants massive voter reform.
You know, Roland, they have gone and looked at our playbook, looked at the playbook of the voter activists, and gone directly at it. When you decide that there will be no Sunday voting, that means you don't want our souls at the polls. When you decide that you will not have the drop boxes, you're saying you got to come inside. Many people are reluctant to come inside. But one of the things that we must understand is that people like LaTosha Brown and others, they're smarter than these devils. They're smarter than these devils, and they're going to figure it out. And when they figure it out, it's going to be an issue of what will they come up with next. But I remember I had an aunt in Moss Point, Mississippi in the 60s who first learned Latin, Roland, had to learn Latin because she had to translate a phrase from English to Latin. So she learned Latin. Then they had the jelly bean test, where she had to figure out how many jelly beans were in a jar. But she didn't give up. She kept coming. And that's what these people understand, is that need to understand. Black folks gonna keep on coming. Black votes are gonna keep on coming. It may be more difficult, but we do have H.R. 1, and it was interesting about H.R. 1. It went down on party lines. One Democrat voted against it, but other than that, it was party line vote. And what does that say? Republicans don't want us to vote? What does it say?
Yeah, of course. That's first of all, Congo, that's exactly what it is. Republicans don't want us to vote. This is pure Jim Crow. And they're trying to say, what really, again, is shameful when they say, well, there are people. There are people who simply just didn't trust the last election. Yeah, because they believe in a lying idiot. That's why. So we're supposed to sit here and accept the changing of voter laws because you got some stuck-on stupid people who believed an idiot like Donald Trump who said the election was stolen?
You are absolutely right. And we have to remember that for anybody out there who says my vote doesn't matter, all we have to do is ask the question, if our vote doesn't matter, why are Republicans working so hard to prevent us from doing it? We have to continue to stay active. Right now, I even heard a story today where they cut early voting by 9 days. And so they're doing everything possible, as Dr. Malvo said. I know that we're going to rebound, but we have to stay awake in every way, shape, and possible because they are not going to stop until they not only have a Republican back in office, but Trump back in office. So we cannot let our guard down, and we need to continue to support. If we're not in a state where this is happening, we need to put our social media, our finances, everything we can towards making sure that this does not happen because they will not stop.
What you're looking at, and this is what the Black Chamber, this is what the Georgia Chamber of Commerce actually released. This is with a tweet. The Georgia Chamber continues to engage in a bipartisan manner with leaders of the General Assembly on bills that will impact voting rights in our state. We have expressed concern and opposition to provisions found in both HB 531 and SB 241 that restrict or diminish voter access. As these two omnibus bills move through the legislative process, we will continue to work on ensuring both accessibility and security within our voting system. That's obviously stronger than what they initially said. As you still hear the dancing by the Chamber of Commerce here. And look, they are not going to come out hard in support of going after these companies. But what the activists are saying to Delta, Home Depot, Coca-Cola, as well as UPS, Aflac, and others, they expect them to say something. And you also have the internal dynamics of people inside of these companies also saying, we got to speak up.
You know, Roland, it's really interesting when you look at the combination of corporate responsibility and corporate integrity, because these folks know they're wrong. They know that the legislature is wrong. They know that Home Depot, Delta, you go down the list, they have employees and constituents who are repelled by this legislative action. But they do the Mr. Bodangle's dance around it and say they don't want to take a position. Well, now is the time to take a position. what we know now after we looked at the insurrection on January 6th, after we have looked at a number of other things, it's time for folks of conscience to stand up, speak up, and man or woman up around these things. So, I'm not sure why these corporations are dancing, except for why they're dancing, because they still want to have Republican approval. And not Republican approval, because I'm not going to disrespect all Republicans, but Donald Trump affiliated approval. And that's what we have to push back on.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have that you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it, please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. 8 people killed, including 6 Asian women, by a white man who supposedly was angry about his sexual addiction. Now, what's interesting about this story is he bypassed strip clubs. He specifically kills Asian women. But the cops are saying, nah, he was having a bad day, and they do not want to call it a hate crime or race was a motive. That's strange to me. It's strange to me that that would be the decision of those police. We are seeing an increase against Asian Americans. President Joe Biden, when he signed an executive order specifically talking about this. I remember there were a lot of black people who were upset. Oh, I can't believe he's doing that. People hitting me on Twitter and YouTube. Folks, we're seeing this. We're seeing the attacks. We're seeing what's taking place in this country. Violence is violence. This is a race-based attack that we're seeing. We can't deny the reality or be clueless like other folks on this very issue. Joining me right now is Leisha Brooks. She is Chief of Staff for the Southern Poverty Law Center. Glad to have you with us. Can you, again, just share with me how you felt when you watched that news conference of the spokesman in Atlanta stand there and, well, the guy was having a bad day. I have never heard a cop describe somebody who admits to killing 8 people as he was having a bad day.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for having me on. He just revealed who he was. And if I could refer back to your earlier guest that was talking about kind of white nationalist talking points and white nationalist agenda, it was completely clear that he did not care anything at all about the victims of that horrific crime, that he set out to protect the perpetrator of this violent and racist act. We have to remember that, as you were alluding to, unchecked violence and racist actions against one group, when they go unchecked, they will spill over into another group. Now, it's important for us to remember, of course, that in this country, anti-Asian racism has existed forever, right? Forever. As had misogyny and white supremacy. And these two things, racism, misogyny, patriarchal violence, go hand in hand. And it, as you say, it's up to each of us to stand up against it. I'm disgusted by the clips you showed earlier about the vote, disgusted but not surprised by the vote on the Violence Against Women Act, especially in light of this horrific killing that took place in Atlanta just Tuesday.
When President Biden signed that executive order, specifically dealing with the increase in Asian American discrimination, there were some people who were going, I don't see this as a big deal. But we've seen this ratchet up. And to your point, other groups attacked. Remember the shooting that took place in the synagogue in Pittsburgh, other attacks that took place. And this refusal, this reluctance of Americans to call it white domestic terrorism. There were some people calling this guy a kid. A 21-year-old person a kid?
Right. A black child would not be offered that opportunity. But let's talk about the increase in anti-Asian attacks. And of course, we could trace it back to, or this particular iteration, back to the former president and his rhetoric, his anti-Asian rhetoric, his consistent insistence on blaming, if you will, Asians and Asian Americans for the coronavirus pandemic, and his referring to it with the use of racial epithets. This increase in anti-Asian rhetoric has produced an increase in actual hate crimes that target Asian folks. We all heard about the 2-year-old and the 6-year-old siblings who were stabbed along with their father in Midland, Texas, last year. And then, of course, the 91-year-old man who was assaulted and knocked over. These are elders. These are children. And now we see women targeted because they're Asian and vulnerable.
Y'all have been tracking these organizations for a very, very long time. The FBI director has testified at the greatest threat of domestic terrorism is white domestic terrorism. Yet this unwillingness to confront white supremacy, to call it what it is. And frankly, there are people in the media, mainstream media, who won't even go as far as we do in calling it what it is. And I'm going, yo, you're making this easy, but trust me, if a Muslim had walked into a nail shot and killed 6 white women, they'll be turning those communities upside down all across America.
You're exactly right. We need to call it what it is. If we have a hope of changing this, if we don't call out white supremacy, if we don't call out the increase in the white nationalist movement, the Southern Poverty Law Center, as you mentioned, has been talking about this for decades, and we have tracked a continued increase in the number of white nationalist groups and individuals who they proved on January 6th that they're more than willing to engage in violence. Political violence, anything to advance what they hope to see as a race war, which they believe will then return them to power and the possibility of a white ethno-state. So we should not be surprised as we'll continue to see this as we continue to mark the shifting demographics that occur across the United States, and as whites will become more of a numerical minority, we'll see a consistent uptick in these attacks. It's really it's about holding on to power.
Center. Yep, sorry. Absolutely. Lisa Brooks, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Roland. Bye-bye.
Greg Carr, I want to start with you. I saw this post by Andrew Yang that I found to be very interesting and problematic, Greg, where Yang was talking about what Asian Americans need to do to show their Americanness. And I really want to say to Brother Yang, guess what? Just like black people, you cannot assimilate into whiteness.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot.
No.
Unlike white Hispanics who can, Asian Americans, Y'all can sit here and wave the flag all you want to. You can sit here and talk about the apple pie, everything else. Trust me, how you look is how they are going to target you.
Absolutely. Ask the Japanese who fought for the United States military during World War II at the same time that the Korematsu decision upheld the fact that their relatives were in concentration camps in this country. So yeah, Yang, Andrew Yang's that's an interesting comment by him. He visited Howard Law School when he was running for president, and I watched him have an interesting dialogue with the students there. Yang is one of those people who doesn't really have a developed cultural theory in terms of America. He thinks in terms of dollars and cents, and so he kind of leaves space open that we just heard our sister Alicia Brooks really hit on. See, the power of whiteness is in its invisibility. Racism and misogyny are twins from the same womb. Whiteness, at the center of whiteness is white maleness. You heard Alicia say that. So when Captain Jay Baker, shout out to Captain Jay, he had to defend his brother because as another white man, he understood and that this killer, that Aaron Long was, in the words of Captain Jay Baker, fed up. That's important. Yes, bad day is important too, but fed up is the one I want to focus on because, as Alicia Brooks just said, there's a fear rising in this country. You talk about white fear all the time, Roland. What does Robert Aaron Long and what does Jay Baker share? As white men, they're seeing it all slip away, baby. It's starting to slip away now. And so we have to understand also, finally, that he's attacking these Asian Americans, these South Korean women and others, because he feels frustration that comes from the real center of whiteness and white maleness, which is fetishizing not just women. You don't find pornography in pre-colonial Africa. You don't find pornography in indigenous America. You find pornography, literally pornographia, the writing of harlots, coming out of Western Eurasia, chiefly France and other places. So you've already dehumanized women. And then when you talk about non-white women, you dehumanize them, but you have this fetish attraction to them that creates this internal conflict that you can only resolve by not dealing with yourself, but channeling it outward in terms of violence, self-hatred, and killing the object. So the question I would ask is, why the hell we got spas where you can go and have sex in the first place? All of this comes around the question of maleness, and at the center of maleness in this country is white maleness, and they are not going to stop. They're fed up, whether it be passing voting, blocking people from voting, or whether it be going and shooting up spas. These white men are fed up. We better wake up to this.
Reese, when I see some folks, I saw some idiot Michael Coates on the YouTube chat room saying, "Oh, you're using the DNC notes. There isn't an uptick in anti-Asian American sentiment in this country." Yes, it is, dumbass. Yes, it is. And just because I'm black does not mean I cannot call out and stand up for Asian brother or sister who's been discriminated against, just like if someone was Latino, and I would damn sure hope that folks would stand up when it comes to black folks as well. And I think there's some black folks who are, well, I don't see them standing up for us, but guess what? How somebody else acts towards me does not dictate how I'm going to act towards them.
Absolutely. And Roland, this goes back to the point that we make multiple times a month on this show, particularly on Thursdays, about the way that white people, particularly white men, have been deputized, self-deputized, or even in some cases deputized by the actual police to eliminate, as Jay Baker said, the temptation, eliminate anybody that they feel like they can eliminate for any reason. That was what really had stood out to me when what the captain had said, is that this man had experienced some temptation and he wanted to eliminate that. You don't get to eliminate people, okay, for any reason, unless you are acting in self-defense, life or death situations. But you don't get to go out and buy a gun and hunt down Asian women because you can't control whatever the hell urges you supposedly have. But white people have been deputized in this country to eliminate Asian women, to eliminate black people who are minding their business, to harass them, to carry out, to assert some authority over us that they do not have. And that is the pervasive problem that we are all subject to. So no, this isn't just an Asian American problem, even though, yes, absolutely, in this case, we have to stand with our with the Asian community. But that mentality that drove this attack is the same mentality that drives the racial terrorism that Black people are subjected to every single day. In the same way that this captain tried to rehabilitate instantly on the spot the image of a white domestic terrorist is the same reason why we don't see justice in our case, because they want to say, oh, he had a bad day, oh, he has an illness, or he has some other situation that's a mitigating factor. There's no mitigating factor for murder, and there's no mitigating factor for terrorism. And so we have to all, as a unit, stand up and say, this is unacceptable. Maybe next time we'll have more people standing with us, maybe not, but we are not exempt from this kind of behavior whatsoever, regardless of who it's perpetrated against.
Amisha, if you have a tax on Asian Americans, if you have a tax on Jewish synagogues, don't think for a second Black folks are going to be bypassed. And what we are seeing, and we saw Donald Trump embrace, salute, empower, embolden these white militias, these white supremacists. You now have Lloyd Austin, Secretary of Defense, and the military is saying that they are increasingly bothered with what they are seeing in terms of this white nationalist sentiment that is being fomented and coming and just moving throughout the U.S. military. This thing is real. And we can't just say, well, that's not us. They should worry about it. We don't have time to worry about it. No. We better be real concerned about these white militias and these white supremacist organizations.
You're absolutely right, Roland. There is a bed of ignorance that comes from anyone who believes that because this is happening to Asian people, Black people should not get involved. The frustration that I have with that is that we watched President Trump for 4 years castigate of color, be it whether they were people from African nations, specifically calling out those as shithole countries, talking about African Americans in places like Baltimore and our home city of Chicago, throwing all types of shade and making it seem like Black people were evil, Black people were a problem, Black people were criminals, rapists, murderers, the exact same thing that he did to Latinos. And then comes COVID-19, and he chose to castigate people of Asian descent. He chose to make fun of Asian reporters. He chose to call this the China virus. He chose to basically, even when we saw time and time again during his administration where Asian people were being attacked, and they would ask him about it, and we saw him give a smile of glee. There was nothing that president did that did not further perpetuate a lot of the violence and the attacks that we've seen on people of color across this country. But as it relates to this case in Atlanta specifically, I do want to say that I don't buy the WAP defense. This is a white man who really sat back and had a conversation, and this is what he's going to use to try to get off, because he understands the Christian right well. The Christian right always wants to sexualize women, always wants to say that they're the threat, always wants to talk about a sin tax and getting rid of porn and getting rid of, the places where women dance, the massage parlor, all of those things. They think he's falling down on this sword, knowing full well that he had a intent to target those individuals, to target those spaces because of the demographic of the women that he was targeting. And that's it, plain and simple.
And can I add to that, Roland? Because what the Asian American community is seeing is what we experience every time. When you're a person of color and you're a victim, you're the one who goes on trial. We don't know if these women were sex workers, and even if they were sex workers, that does not give anybody license to murder them. But now the onus has shifted from the fact that we're not talking about this as much as a hate crime, but we're talking about sex workers and what these women may or may not have been doing. And that's what they always do. It's disgusting. Before we even learn the name and the ages of these women, they're being characterized by the police as sex workers, or the insinuation is put out there. And that is disgusting. That's a violation of them. And I'm not saying disgusting. I'm not anti-sex worker, be clear, but I'm just saying we don't know what they were doing. And Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, to her credit, said that these were legally operating businesses. But this is what they do. They deflect and they put the attention and they try to make the victims have to justify their humanity and whether or not their life was worth being eliminated or not.
That's right. All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have that you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it, please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. As Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. The newly appointed editor-in-chief of Teen Vogue has resigned after a staff uproar over anti-Asian tweets she sent out 10 years ago when she was 17 years old and in college. Alexi McCammon, a 27-year-old rising star in the industry. She worked with Axios for the 2019 NABJ Emerging Journalist of the Year. Well, she was appointed earlier this month to be the editor-in-chief. What then happened was there were staffers who blasted her because of tweets that she sent out 10 years ago. Now, she addressed those tweets 2 years ago, apologized for them, deleted them, but now they come back and lead to her resigning her position. She posted a statement on Twitter. I'm going to read that statement. If y'all have that statement there, go ahead and pull it up, please. But in the statement, she said that they parted ways. That is, she as well as Condé Nast, who hired her, agreed to part ways. Allow me to read this for you, folks. And this story, I was actually on a call earlier and saw this, and here's, I know her, I know Alexi. Like I said, she's in NABJ, but it still was shocking to lots of people how this whole thing went down that forced her. She said, I became a journalist to help lift up the stories and voices of our most vulnerable communities. As a young woman of color, that's part of the reason I was so excited to lead the Teen Vogue team in its next chapter. My past tweets have overshadowed the work I've done to highlight the people and issues that I care about. Issues that Teen Vogue has worked tirelessly to share with the world, and so Condé Nast and I have decided to part ways. I should not have tweeted what I did, and I have taken full responsibility for that. I look at my work and growth in the years since and have redoubled my commitment to growing in the years to come as both a person and as a professional. I wish the talented team at Teen Vogue the absolute best moving forward. Their work has never been more important, and I will be rooting for them. There are so many stories left to be told, especially those about marginalized communities and the issues affecting them. I hope to have the opportunity to rejoin the ranks of tireless journalists who are shining light on the issues that matter every single day. Reese, there are very few African Americans who hold the top spot among mainstream magazines. Very few. Very few at Condé Nast. And to be 27 years old to be the EIC is also a pretty big deal. Now, as I said, the tweets were posted 10 years ago. She was 17. The controversy erupted 2 years ago. It comes back in 2021. So the question a lot of people are posing is is she supposed to apologize every time she gets a new job? Is she supposed to lose opportunities because of what she posted when she was 17 years old? The question is, can we forgive somebody who made a mistake when they were 17? Because what she tweeted was wrong and horrible. But do we hold that against them forever? Your thoughts?
When you black, the answer is yes. When you black, as long as you in your place, it's okay. All that was in the past. That was a long time ago. But as soon as you start to ascend to the next level, it's always going to be an issue. I applaud Alexi for taking accountability and for unequivocally, being apologetic and being accountable for her tweets, even though she was young, as you have pointed out. But I think this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where, for one, like you said, this was not a new controversy. It was something that was already addressed in 2019. It was something that Anna Wintour and the leadership at Condé Nast was aware of in terms of her tweets. And so what they calculated is, okay, maybe she gets a little blowback, but in the meantime, we get our little woke points because we put a black woman and she's going to make history. We're going to get all these good, headlines from the fact that we put a young black woman over the magazine. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the team at Teen Vogue is galvanizing against her. So she wasn't going to succeed anyway because of the fact that there were people who were going to be resistant to her leadership, which is something that happens often when black people are in charge. I'm not excusing or even addressing her tweets in and of itself, but it probably would have been something else. Let me just put it like that. But the bottom line is that Condé Nast got what they wanted, which was the good publicity and the good feedback from making this history with Alexi, only to turn around and throw her under the bus and allow her to fall on her sword. It's unfortunate timing that, the events that we've seen unfold over the last couple of days. Obviously, it's unconscionable to try to defend anything that has any kind of anti-Asian rhetoric, but at the same time, it's just kind of like now you just want to make an example out of her. So at the end of the day, what she said was wrong. She took accountability for it. I hope that this doesn't ruin her future. But we've seen time and time again, it's even happening right now with Kristen Clarke. It's happening with all these women of color nominees talking about their tweets. It doesn't matter how benign the tweets are. If you're saying anything that they don't like, they try to smack you back down. And so my whole thing is, let's see who they put after Alexi. Let's see if this was all just a gimmick to like I said, get those good headlines and those woke points as we are dealing with this racial reckoning. And let's see what they do now. Because if it's just, okay, well, we tried the Blackie for a couple of weeks. She had some tweets, which we already knew about. Now she got to go. Let's go back to status quo. Then I would say they all full of shit.
Mm-hmm. Amisha, what was interesting here is I asked some folks on my Twitter feed saying, well, if this was somebody white who said something, you'd be feeling differently. I said, actually, I wouldn't. If that was somebody white who had some awful tweets at 17, first, I am factoring in your 17. That's first. 17-year-olds do stupid shit. I can tell you right now, I've warned every single one of my nieces and nephews about things that they have tweeted. And in fact, there have been times when I've seen stuff and I called them and I've said, delete that bullshit. Take that down. And I've actually said to them, be careful what you tweet because that could very well impact your career down the road and you didn't even realize it. So you just tweet it in the moment because you just being young and dumb and trying to be cute. But I literally sent them this story today. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that I keep hearing from people is that, you had folk on the inside who were targeting her and who didn't want there to be a black editor. First of all, that was one of the theories I've heard. Another theory was that, hey, when you make a mistake, you have to keep atoning when anyone asks. Sorry. I disagree with that one. I think your work determines how somebody can now judge you. Your work determines that. But there said, Misha, the third thing with this particular story here, which people still haven't even dealt with me, at what point is she allowed to keep living and breathing? I remember when Mark Halperin said it to me, well, am I supposed to never have a job? And I said, well, first of all, Mark, you apologize in an interview, but you have never apologized personally to the women who you were masturbating behind your desk. Oh, no, I said, no, bro. I said, no. You playing games here. This here, to me, is a moment where, and it's not because I know her, it's not because she's black, it's a moment, Amisha, where you say, first of all, now I really can pressure you, and you're going to have to do extra to show us you mean business. The next person don't have to. I think it was a mistake on the part of the staff not to accept her additional apologies and then say, we're going to judge you on what you do the next 6 months to a year. We'll be watching. To me, that should have happened.
It's frustrating, Roland. And you know, I'll preface this with saying that I know Alexi personally. The frustrating part here for me is that they're holding her accountable for something not only that happened at 17, but something that she has apologized 70 times 7 already. Like, this has been covered and covered fully. And it was something that they knew about before she came on, and something that she knew she was going to face when she got there because those ripplings happened. A lot of this is blowback because there are many people within this industry who just don't want to see a young black woman rise to an editor level. They just don't, especially the historically white spot. And I think that she was going to face this pressure whether or not those tweets existed. Yes, they were bad. Yes, they were wrong. Again, she was a 17-year-old. Most 17-year-olds are still in high school, not even in college. I'm going to forgive you easily for something that you tweeted at 17 that might have been stupid. We have insurrectionists. We have insurrectionists in Congress and in the Senate who have current tweets about, you know, the hateful things that they want to see happen on January 6th, and they have yet to apologize for any of it. So let's tell you, there's a huge difference between ignorance in youth versus you inciting violence as an adult and not being held accountable. Alexi took accountability for her actions as a 17-year-old years ago now. At this point, as someone who has risen in the ranks, who held her own at Axios, who has interviewed presidents, vice presidents, candidates, here, there, everywhere, somebody who has proven herself worthy of the position at which she was in, because nobody just gives black people anything. So you got to prove yourself worthy time and time again to get there. And to still be treated like this, that is a problem for me. Because how many times does she have to apologize? How many times does she have to do this for it to be okay? And the fact that Teen Vogue and Condé Nast is supposed to be an organization that is liberal, yet they treat this woman in the wake of a racial reckoning across this country as someone who is basically napalm for their organization. Because this wasn't just a regular resignation. Let's be real. They pushed her the hell out. And that's what happened.
That's right. That's right.
Greg, a lot of people were very surprised the other day when you said that Georgetown should not have fired those professors. Your take on Alexi resigning today?
Well, brother, I tell you, you know, I think it was a perfect storm. I'm not saying it was an outlier or an anomaly because first of all, I don't read Teen Vogue. Right. But Condé Nast, of course, being what it is with its venerable tradition of whiteness, although I must say I did pick up a recent copy because Tandiwe Abdullah, the daughter actually of Melina Abdullah, you found Black Lives Matter LA, was featured as one of the young people who is out in the street trying to make change. You know, she's a freshman at Howard. So I did go and get a copy of Teen Vogue for that. But this sister is the third black to be promoted to editor-in-chief there. I mean, Elaine Welterworth was 29. When she got promoted to be the editor-in-chief of Teen Vogue, a sister, and Lindsay Peoples was 28 when they picked her. And all this has happened over the last several years. I think it was a perfect storm. I think I agree. There was an internal revolt. They went outside. They didn't promote from within. So, you know, it's going to be that type of resentment. I think but here's the key point, I think, and it's very important in the larger conversation we're having. They knew about these tweets. They vetted her. She had conversations about them. And so the only thing that changed between then and now is Robert Aaron Long. So understand that there was not enough.
Well, no. Well, no. Condé Nast knew, but it was the staff that released that letter, basically, essentially saying, we ain't gonna work for her. They didn't say that. So it was this staff, and I'll pull up in a second, one of the staffers who was on Instagram was blasting her. This is racist. We can't allow it. I don't care if it happened years ago. I don't care if she apologized a year ago. And so, but I do think you're right. I think you do that with the other stories of anti-Asian attacks. Yes, you throw on Long. I think you're absolutely right.
Well, that's all I was going. Roland, I agree with you 100%. And that's all I was saying. It's a perfect storm, because if she had been the first black woman to be the editor-in-chief, perhaps this plays different. But she's the third. So they could hide behind the other two sisters. I mean, I just think that, again, the calculus of how we have to, as black people, and how we have to, as black women in certain circumstances, black men in certain circumstances, try to do this trigonometry of race to navigate these treacherous shows. And then you got an internal Hunger Games going on with other non-white staffers deciding they're going to go out on strike. My question is, at the end of the day, when do we exercise, going back to the thing we've been saying over and over again today and throughout the history of this platform, this broadcast that you're building, when do we marshal our collective strength so that when one of us finds themselves out in harm's way, they are not left with anything other than the apologizing the way she did, trying to hold on and hoping. Axios, wasn't that Mike Allen? Didn't he get in trouble?
Yeah.
I mean, hoping that she can be rehabilitated at 27. That blows my mind, brother. 27 years old, and she got to worry about whether she's going to work again. That is inconceivable, except you are in a position where white institutional power can have complete sway over your life chances because we haven't continued to develop or extend the spaces that can be counterweights to this world where whim can converge, and now you out of a job and worried about the rest of your career.
And can I add to,
Absolutely.
Black people are always expected to forgive and forget and move on. Let's do an oppo dump on every single one of these Teen Vogue folks. Let's do an oppo dump on the past 10, actually not even just 10 years, but back to when you 17. Let's see what you said about Black people. And let's see how many of y'all end up being forced to resign. And so I think it's interesting that the history, as Dr. Carr pointed out, that Condé Nast has with their racism against Black people or their problematic behavior. How many times has this happened where somebody has resigned over anti-Blackness or racism towards Black people? So let's just keep the same energy. That's fine. Let's establish this. This is the standard going forward. If you've ever said anything, then you got to go. So let's keep that same energy and let's vet the white people that come behind or everybody. Let's vet everybody the same way. Let's hold everybody to the same standard. And then let's see how many people that we have left to run these magazines, including Anna Wintour.
All right.
That's right.
All right, Bob, precisely. All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have that you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it, please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.